This week's episode was brought to you by Efren Hernandez, Nick Mahala, Connor Clayson, Neil McBride, and Amano Uzumi. Thank you, Efren Hernandez, Nick Mahala, Connor Clayson, Neil McBride, and Amano Uzumi. It's with the generous support of listeners just like you that keeps our high-capacity, ultra-pressurized, helium-queef-operated howitzer cannon loaded with enough whipped cream to penetrate the surface of the moon, making it into a large enough cream puff to bribe the ravenous 8-dimensional megalithic planet-eating space slinky into delaying the swallowing of the Earth until its next orbit in 10,000 years. If you'd like to help delay the consumption of the planet Earth by the incomprehensible forces beyond our imagining, or just hear the second half of this episode, please become a subscriber at www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where your monthly donation of just $5 will not only get you the extended version of this show, but our entire library of extended shows going back over 3 years in RSS feed format compatible with your podcast player of choice. But not only that, I'll even send you a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our Big Baphomet bunny cover art and the secret keys to our Discord server where fans and creators of the show compare notes about the hidden meaning of Seinfeld. Pressurize the seltzer, polish up your big red nose, and prepare your face for pie, because on this week's episode, we're discussing not just the exceedingly ancient history of clowns, but their strangely coherent set of symbols and mythology spanning multiple time periods and cultures, concluding with the Heyoka of the Native American Sioux tribes. In the extended show, we discuss what clowns have to do with ancient Egyptian deities, the religion of Thelema, Carl Jung, and of course, the Fool in the Tarot. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the show. Bart's a Scientologist, by the way.
No way.
Who said this?
Look it up, man. The voice actress. She's a big donor.
No.
There's some lady who comes into my store. She's like super tweaked out and she's constantly laughing.
Well, good for her. I'm happy she's happy.
I'm like, hey, that's $235 here. And I'm like, whoa. This lady's amazing.
She just knows her Gematria real well.
She's tapped in, but she's all out of mana.
Hello, everybody. Step right up, don't be shy, and prepare yourself for the spine-tingling main attraction. And welcome to The Whole Rabbit, where we don't just expose our fragile egos to the unfiltered radiation of psycho-spiritual mimetic analysis. Nay, we slap a funny red nose on, throw you in the trunk with the rest of the bozos we kidnap before racing full speed with a head full of laughing gas and blow up the popcorn factory, because this week, it's time to send in the clowns. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm your humble host and ringleader, the Hack Rabbit, Luke Madrid. I ask that you please give a warm and wild welcome to this week's co-host, the Corgi Clown Queen of A-Town, Marisama.
Honk honk, y'all.
El Mato, the mysterious sideshow Mao.
Mucho gusto. Hola.
And a real live unicorn, Heka Astra.
Hello. This morning I was meditating and figured out my clown name would be Nono. Nono the clown.
You see Nono coming in, it's just like, no! No!
Oh, no.
No, no.
No, no, no.
I got a really cool friend. He goes by the name Loco Coco. He is a world-traveling clown. That's what he does for a job, and he lives off of it. I really look up to him.
Loco Coco.
Yes.
Sounds like a mixed drink that you'd order at a cheap resort.
He went back to Mexico. He's tired of the U.S.
Good name.
Well, it's tempting to think of clowns as little more than a creepy, antiquated tradition from a bygone era, now reserved only for children parties, horror movies, and occasionally the circus. It would be to overlook their long and colorful history as potent spiritual figures, possessed of a divine purpose in cultures all around the world. While many types of clowns exist, they tend to share some important features. Regardless of culture, clowns tend to display themselves outlandishly, with often garish or motley attire that immediately sets them apart from the crowd, even at long distance. As such, clowns are particularly poorly suited for stealth. Complementary to their high visibility, clowns are often expected to put on a performance of some kind or another, typically dance, pantomime, or, most famously, physical humor. And while clowns are most often expected to ignite laughter, they sometimes may be frightening, shocking, or even offensive. In all cases, these qualities emerge from the clown's most important role as the unpunishable disruptor of ceremony and reverser of social norms. Clowns often form their own secret societies, and even when separated by time, distance, and culture, share a surprisingly coherent set of mythic symbolism, linking them to the heavens, baby gods, and of course, Your mom.
Dun-dun-ch.
We've spoken about clowns on the show before, but they're like one of those conspiracy icebergs, and we just keep finding new stuff. If there's any listeners out there interested in the tarot, pretty much everything we're discussing today can be related to the Fool card. Kind of an important card.
It's the Fool's Journey.
Yeah, it starts off with the Fool. It's the 0 card.
The earliest historical use of clowns is said to originate in ancient Egypt more than 4,000 years ago. These clowns likely evolved from a special revered class of people they termed dog or deneg, which were prized workers of the pharaoh and the royal household. A dog or deneg was, as we would know them today, peoples with pygmyism or dwarfism, but even in the case of a shortened lifespan, it would not be seen as a disability. Far from it.
From the very first dynasty of the Old Kingdom, which is around 3150 BC, there's evidence of dwarves that were buried in subsidiary tombs near the pharaohs. And this indicates both considerable respect due to being buried in such close proximity to the pharaohs, as well as renowned social positions. It's understood that individuals affected with dwarfism were not regarded with distaste or disdain by the ancient Egyptians, but rather that they were considered to be manifest, sacred, and celestial beings.
That's kind of cool.
This is good news for anyone who's short, because short stature was regarded in high esteem and referred to as a divine manifestation. I guess the shorter, the better. So even dwarf statues have been discovered in pre-dynastic tombs, and that implies significant symbolic spiritual reverence. There are also many examples of renowned people with dwarfism in ancient Egypt that have been discovered over the years, providing Egyptologists with evidence that they were not only accepted and revered, but often held high positions such as court officials or overlookers of Ka priests. And these dwarves were married, they had children, or generally lived their lives just like any other Egyptian.
Often, deneg were utilized for dance or acting during religious festivals or ceremonies, but they also worked as craftspersons, jewelers, tailors, zookeepers, and even cupbearers.
They were very closely linked to any form of creative expression. Emphasis on this divine link to creative expression, it stayed constant throughout Egyptian antiquity. From the 6th dynasty of the Old Kingdom comes the first evidence of a travelogue, which is essentially a detailed document regarding travels. This travelogue comes in the form of inscriptions on the tomb of Aswan's governor, Harkuf, who, as an esteemed high priest and traveling governor, made several business trades with the Nubians. The travelogue recounted a letter written to Harkuf by the boy pharaoh, King Pepi II, also called Neferkara. Now, this famous letter, it shows that the boy pharaoh Pepi excitedly wrote to Harkuf in regards to a pygmy while Harkuf was away on expedition to Nubia.
So this guy made it a top priority to get his little person back.
So it's kind of like the Mandalorian.
Yes.
King Pepi was so excited about the pygmy that he made sure to explain the importance of the dwarf arriving not just alive, but also in good health and spirits. The safe arrival of the pygmy was considered more important than all the treasures from Punt. Basically, the boy king was like, don't you let anybody fuck with that precious dwarf.
That dwarf wants to eat asparagus? Well, you better have some asparagus ready. You make sure my dwarf is comfortable.
So both achondroplastic dwarfism and pygmyism have been documented in ancient Egypt using the hieroglyph deneg that Luke mentioned, and with the word nemu, meaning malformed or disproportioned, seeming to be used as a distinguisher when it seemed relevant to point out the different proportions of an achondroplastic dwarf.
I think it's interesting they had a classification system that wasn't unimaginably different from ours.
Well, because pygmyism, they're proportionate the same way that a taller person would be. But people with achondroplastic dwarfism, you know, like Mini-Me from Austin Powers, that's the proportion of them. So they just use this as a distinguisher. So the pygmies, they were especially renowned for dancing what the Egyptians called the gods dance. But this seems to also be a trait that symbolically transferred to those with achondroplastic dwarfism as well.
I can't help but think of the way that the gnomes danced in World of Warcraft.
I mean, who doesn't love a dancing dwarf? Determinative hieroglyphs were also added to Daneg, the word for dwarves, to emphasize particular traits like dancing dwarf or fashion dwarf.
Woo! Slay.
Either way, unfortunately, by 1550 BC, that's the time of the New Kingdom, people had to be reminded not to abuse dwarves and to instead be kind to them.
Aw.
People can be dicks. So evidence for this necessary reminder exists in ways that they were often depicted in the New Kingdom, where these little people were shown in degrading ways or actively being ridiculed. One papyrus in particular, the wise doctrine of Amenemope, son of Kanak, even explicitly asks people not to treat dwarves poorly. It says,
Do not jeer at a blind man or tease a dwarf. Neither interfere with the conditions of a cripple. Do not taunt a man who is in the hand of God, nor scowl at him if he errs. Yeah, good advice.
Yeah, clowns be doing some crazy shit, man. And if they mess up while they're doing it, I guess it's still funny, but
They could die.
don't scowl at them for that.
Jugglers also appear in hieroglyphs from pre-dynastic Egypt, sometimes performing acrobatics with other jugglers. Juggling itself is seen as meditative, but also a form of magic. This helps support the unprovable claim that the tarot goes all the way back to Egypt, as the fool is followed by the magus, who is sometimes referred to in old decks as the juggler. To this day, clowns can still be expected to possess a magical skill or ability.
It's true. Clowning ain't easy. So I just hopped onto Google for these numbers and these facts. Apparently, only 21% of people can juggle.
I can't believe it's that high.
Totally.
Right, and you see some top tier ones doing some amazing stuff while they're juggling. So even fewer than that, of course, is sword swallowers. I know that's something strange to associate with clowns, but if you've ever gone to, like a real circus, some of the clowns are sword swallowing. Kind of weird, but they do that with balloons too, I think.
I've seen a sword swallower.
Yeah, cool people. And apparently there's less than a few dozen professional sword swallowers that are still alive and performing professionally to this day.
Wow.
And I've seen plenty clowns and jesters do fire breathing, and I couldn't really find data on how many people in the world do that, but it's not common.
You more often see fire jugglers. Some of them do some fire breathing techniques, but most of them, it's called poi, and it's a Polynesian, islander type thing. They juggle these pots that are burning.
It's also a ketamine hippie thing as well.
Yeah, that's where I see most of them are hippies.
I can't breathe fire, but I can eat fire.
Ooh.
Chomp chomp.
Om nom nom.
And I've seen some pretty amazing knife throwing clowns here in LA. I knew some sideshow people, and I saw my friend, this chick who's a sword swallower contortionist, up on a wheel, and this dude named Sleezo was tossing knives at her while we were all waiting in line to get into a haunted hayride up in the Hollywood Hills. And that's some shit that clowns just do. Some clowns are just like, oh, I'm one of those clowns. I got a bunch of knives. And you're like, oh, fuck you. And it's cool. Yeah, you do see some of these people at raves. Some of them are real hippie types, and they're retired clowns. It's kind of a weird path in life, and it's pretty brave in my eyes.
Can you ever retire from being a clown?
I don't think so.
It's like the CIA.
Yeah, you learn all these cool tricks and things, and you don't just forget them.
At any moment, the clown boss could call you, "Hey, bub, we got a job for you. We need a clown." And you have to answer the call.
And sometimes clowns are portrayed in noble, sacrificial positions, even to the past 100 years. For example, rodeo clowns, they're there for the sole purpose of when things go wrong with the matador, they run in and lure the bull and distract him so the matador could collect himself and, get in position to kill this fucking beast.
In other rodeos, if you're riding a horse that's bucking, if it kicks you off, if that horse kicks you in the head or stomps on you, it's pretty much a death sentence. So these guys will run out and wave a red flag or distract the animal somehow to keep him away from the rider so that they can get out of the ring.
Right, because a bucking horse will sometimes be like, oh, I'm about to stomp on you now. I know you were on my back. And
oh, yeah. They go after the person that was on their back.
Yeah, and you see some riders get all oh. They're all running and all these clowns start coming in. It's pretty awesome.
You telling me that animals also have a strange distaste of clowns?
The clowns will grab the animal's attention for sure because of the bright colors and the tricks that they do and all the acrobatics. So they prefer to run after them instead.
I think the clowns originally got introduced into rodeo through just in between riders. They'd go out and just do juggling and tricks and stuff. And I bet one day one clown was just really drunk or bored and just hopped in there when shit was going wrong and noticed that the fucking bull went after the guy with all the colors on. So I bring all this up, all these points, fire breathing and juggling and tossing knives, is that professional clowns learn a lot of dangerous and niche stuff. And it makes sense if they're to be entertaining because you got to go to the extremes.
As the 18th century poet and satirist Alexander Pope wrote in his essay on criticism, "Fools rush in where angels fear to tread."
Well, fire breathing, running from bulls, and swallowing swords is perilous. The most dangerous and hopefully skillful thing a clown does is disagree with state policy, oftentimes directly to the face of the king. An ancient example exists of this in 300 BC during the Zhou dynasty when Yu-Sze, the court gesture of Emperor Qin Shi Huangdi, famously poked fun at him until he relented on his plan to whitewash the enemy side of the Great Wall of China, which had recently been constructed and, due to poor working conditions, had already set the cost of the Chinese workforce at 400,000 human lives.
Dude, building a wall like that is crazy dangerous too. So like people were probably getting like crushed by boulders and like also dying of exhaustion or
And they would just throw your body into the wall and use you as mortar, apparently.
Jesus.
So needless to say, painting the newly constructed Great Wall would both be costly in human life, but also, like the Golden Gate Bridge, would probably never conclude. As legend would have it, while everybody else was too afraid to even question the emperor's plan, Yu-Sze was busy painting the wall already, but with a gargantuan penis.
So the court jester just went and graffitied a big old dick on it.
When Emperor Huangdi realized what happened, he had Yu-Sze whipped as punishment, threatening to force the rebellious clown to whitewash the entire wall by himself. Yu-Sze responded by saying he had chosen the wrong clown for the job, as he was colorblind. As word of the disagreement traveled far and wide, people thought it was hilarious and collectively shamed Huangdi from ever moving forward with the project. He's a national hero because of it.
I like to imagine him as a dwarf. I don't know if he was a dwarf, but it's even funnier if I imagine him that way.
He just painted what everyone was thinking.
Imagine you just did a long one across the whole length of it. Hell yeah.
I feel like in a way that's what he's saying it was.
I guess that is a funny joke.
So, even though the first circuses in America were absent of clowns and tended towards the spectacle afforded by fancy or talented horses, it would be difficult today to separate the idea of clowns from the circus. In fact, in ancient Rome, horse circuits and clowns had come in one package for centuries and will initiate our etymological journey into the clown world.
Right, so the etymological roots of the word circus, it refers to the large, oblong, unroofed enclosures used for races, like a big tent. Also, today, that's what we know it as. In ancient Rome, it's from circus, which is ring or circular line. I find that pretty profound because we're going to talk about the fool's journey here, and it is a circuit. It's actually magical charge looping back into itself like Ouroboros. But to continue with the etymological roots of circus, the word was also applied by Romans to circular arenas for performances and contests, and oval courses for racing. And it's cognate with the Greek kirkos, a circle or ring. So it's just, we commonly associate clowns with circuses, and the fool's journey is like a big giant circus with a bunch of freaky things going on inside, and side shows, side missions, I guess, if you want to distract yourself.
It's like a whole tiny world going on inside of this ring.
But eventually it comes back to where it began. Now, the largest circus in Rome was the Circus Maximus. Sometimes referred to as the living room of the Republic. The circus might host horse races, theaters, markets, and generally speaking, it was the place to come together. This concept of hosting games or activities specifically for the benefit of the people was known as ludi, and was often done in conjunction with religious holidays. The Circus Maximus was located in the valley between the Palatine and Aventine Hills, basically the center of town, and was the oldest and largest public space in Rome. Legend holds that the circus was initially laid out in the 6th century BCE by the first Roman kings, although it first took its distinctive shape under Julius Caesar. Much like today, the special events held there might last one day, half day, or many days at a time. Even at the height of the Circus Maximus's construction for the use as chariot racing, it was liberally enjoyed for occasions of every sort and was the most popular location for large-scale venationes, which were events where beasts were hunted among specifically constructed forests of trees. While people enjoyed ludi, it was considered part of the veneration of the traditional pantheon of Roman gods. In a sense, partying was just part of being a good and faithful Roman civic duties.
So they do like small scale little hunts.
Yeah, they would build a whole forest in that big circuit, pull out all these trees and put bushes down, and then they just like let a bunch of deer or crazy vicious animals go, and people just watch as they'd be hunted.
Visceral.
I thought it was interesting the classical piece most people associated with clowning is named Entry of the Gladiators by Julius Fusik. That one.
Wow. That's just like confirming of our theories.
I would pay to see clowns fight to the death.
Clown Fight Club?
From the Roman theater, we have stupidus, which is where we get the term stupid. Sometimes they were referred to as parasiti, as in parasite. The stupidus would mimic the main actor on stage in a buffoonish fashion. Now, few recognizable statues exist of these actors, save for a handful at the Sacred Grove of Diana at Lake Nemi.
Awesome.
That's the place our Discord is named for, just for funsies. Foremost among them is a full-length statue of C. Fundilius Doctus, dedicator of the shrine, identified in the inscription as Apollonius Parasitus. Stupidus are described as the prototypical harlequin, with multicolored garments, a pointed hat, always a bald head, and were masters of slapstick comedy, innuendo, and riddles. The term moron is owed to the Moriones, another fool of this variety. Ones with visible disabilities were known as scurra, from which we derive scurrius. Despite these harsh-sounding descriptors, wealthy families often kept fools, treating them well, and considered doing so a boon of good luck.
Oh, they kept them like cats.
Well, it's the continuation of the old Egyptian mentality where it's like, this thing is blessed, it's divine. If I have it around me, good things will happen.
Seems to be a little bit like the elves, the house elves from Harry Potter.
Or even droids.
Sure. R2.
I don't think you get much work out of these guys, though.
R2's like the greatest short side character in any story ever. He's kind of a clown.
Which brings us to the word fool. Where does the word fool come from, and what does it mean?
Un génie fou means a mad genius in French. And the French word fou means mad or insane. And it's derived from the same root as the words fool and folly, which is from the Latin folis. And that means a blacksmith's bellows or a windbag, which is used for blowing air to stoke a fire.
Ah.
This bellows meaning served as an adjective description of a mad or insane person. The windbag, by extension, was used metaphorically to refer to an empty-headed person. As such, this concept could be related to the modern term airhead and maybe even possibly served as an inspiration for it.
I can't help but think of the weird kid with the bag in American Beauty. He wins the king's daughter because he's so original. He's so confident. He's so connected to his inner childlike innocence. He sees how the universe just wants to play with him.
The plastic bag that's being carried by the air. Right.
Yes.
Air is pretty closely related to the whole idea of inspiration.
Right. So this bellows, the stoking of a fire, inspiration itself is often given a fiery association. And as far as stoking fires goes, that really is the job of any mad genius or clown that's worth their lick of salt, to get other people fired up or stoked through the forceful expulsion of air, even if that literally means farting.
Windbag, blowhard, full of hot air, or even the term highfalutin. They all refer to this.
Yeah, clowns even invented the whoopee cushion out of animal bladders.
They made poo-poo out of pee-pee. The poop that took a pee. I get it now. That was a book I found in the South Park game. Now I know it's a reference to the whoopee cushion and the path of the fool. I am enlightened. So then this thing happened where Jesus was crucified and nobody could have fun ever again. In fact, the Christians made sure that only puppets could tell stories. But the life of the fool and the clown continued, and it managed to survive all the way until the present day. But how did it survive through the era of the church?
Well, I think one way that clowns and funny people survive to the modern age is through Carnival, which is, the time of merrymaking before Lent. And its older etymological roots are from Latin, literally meaning raising flesh. So just like Christ, in its etymological roots, this time of merrymaking and clowns and gestures is about raising flesh.
Or removing or saying goodbye to. Because carne is flesh, and then vale would be to bid farewell.
Yeah, and what did they do to Christ? They cut him up and we said bye. But then he came back.
Also in Lent, a lot of people, traditionally you would give up meat for Lent, but fish don't count. You can still eat fish.
So you got to eat a lot of meat before it kicks off.
Yeah, or whatever you're giving up, sugar, debauchery, any of wine and all that stuff, you usually would give up for Lent. So party it out.
Goodbye, meat.
You guys ever seen a Christian clown?
Fortunately, no.
Really?
I guess the closest it would come to is the puppets from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, but no, I have not seen a Christian clown.
When I was a kid, there was a woman in our church that did singing telegrams dressed as a clown, and her clown name, I believe it was Tickleberry. She even had a business called Tickleberry Telegrams.
That's adorable.
Did she tickle berries?
I don't know. She was Christian. She at least wanted to tickle berries, I think.
That's when you get that that tickleberry craving. I think it's crazy you do an ecclesiastical clown in real life.
Yep. When she was at church, she wasn't the clown. She was the piano player and like the organ kind of thing. She was our musical lady. But outside of church, she was Tickleberry. So if we're following the Roman traditions, we see a continued historical theme of clowns in forms of Christianity, like Catholicism. And one such feature is the Feast of Fools. It first developed in the 12th century in France as a fairly tame liturgical celebration on January the 1st, which is the day of circumcision.
Boo.
Here we go again with the ring.
That's true.
So this was likely a resultant part of adaptations of earlier pagan-based celebrations like Saturnalia, because that's around the same time.
Or
Again,
rings.
The rings.
Yeah. So January 1st was a Roman feast day, which celebrated the anniversary of the Mother of God. And on this day, it was likewise said to be the 8th day after Christ's birth. And that's the day that he was circumcised and named Jesus.
2 rings now.
So Christ's circumcision is said to be the first bloodshed of the Savior, and that marks the beginning of the redemption of man. The hallmark Christian notion of the Feast of Fools actually has a biblical basis for its integral nature as a celebration, which comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 27 through 31. It says,
But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. God chose the lowly things of this world and the despised things and the things that are not to nullify the things that are, so that no one may boast before him. It is because of him that you are in Christ Jesus, who has become for us wisdom from God, that is, our righteousness, holiness, and redemption. Therefore, as it is written, let the one who boasts boast in the Lord.
So this verse is essentially the basis for Feast of Fools and the Christian clown. For this day only, the roles of the bishop would be taken up by low-ranking subdeacons, which inverted the hierarchy with a false bishop or pope at the head. And these false popes or bishops would bear such titles as the Pope of Fools or the Lord of Misrule.
The Lord of Misrule!
Then there would be parodies of ecclesiastical rituals that would be enacted, with power and impunity being granted to those who would otherwise not have it, and a humbling removal of rank for those who abdicated it for the day. But in the 15th century, the Feast of Fools was condemned in accordance to prohibitions and penalties as ordered by King Charles VII of France.
Boo!
But that didn't seem to stop all the churches from celebrating it, because while the Feast of Fools was barely surviving within the churches, other people that were outside the churches were still gathering, parading, and performing on that day. And they'd be wearing donkey ears, garish costumes, and generally acting obscene and foolish. So this kind of celebration, it continued on for at least 200 more years into the 1700s, and possibly served as the precursor to other festivals like Carnival and Mardi Gras. So the people who would don donkey ears on their heads for Feast of Fools seem to also have used the celebration together with another January celebration, which is the Feast of the Ass. And
Woo! Sounds good to me, brother.
My favorite day of the whole year.
Feast of the Ass. So the Feast of the Ass, it celebrated the biblical flight of Mary, Jesus, and Joseph into Egypt on a donkey. But hey, you interpret it how you want to.
It's set.
So like that 200-year section where they technically were not allowed to do the Feast of Fools, but they did it anyway. I heard one story where the town kidnapped their bishop until he agreed to have the Feast of Fools back. And they had a really hard time prosecuting the kidnappers because the head of the kidnappers was the mayor of the town.
Yeah.
So we really have just been talking about various cultures that have had fools or clowns or some sort of silly man integrated into their societies. And we generally know them as clown societies. And that might sound funny, and it did sound funny to me, but there's also like real pure clown societies, like cliques or groups of people that are all clowns.
Carnies even, people who associate regularly with actual clowns.
Yeah, like fairs that are in your neighborhood where they bring like Ferris wheels and stuff and put them in your public parks. Those people all roll together across the country and do that for a living. So clowns live amongst them. And that's a little bit more about what we're going to talk about next, is like actual like groups of these sideshow people or
Social outcasts.
well, yeah, like the Juggalos.
Clowns of a feather.
They're a more modern iteration, I'd say. And Juggalos, I would say they're based on this modern trope of clowns, whereas they're supposed to be buffoonish, hilarious. You're supposed to laugh at them. They're supposed to bring joy to children And especially in the, the 19th century and the 20th century, those modern clowns are supposed to be entertainment.
But gangsters wear big, funny pants too.
It's almost a perfect juxtaposition. And I'd have to argue, too, we also have to look at, I think it was when Stephen King wrote It, and when that started to hit the group consciousness, that clowns kind of became scary. What I like about the Juggalo subculture is where they come from and the fact that they're actually kind of scary on the outside. There are fans of horrorcore rap and hip-hop duo Insane Clown Posse, whose iconic black and white face paint started an entire movement based on their music and their own storytelling. The nickname Juggalo was given to the fans by the band during a live 1992 performance of the song The Juggler, referencing a juggler, which is an old type of clown. These people aren't really officially clowns. They're not performers in every day. They don't do it for a living. But the lifestyle that sprang up out of this group certainly appears to be of the same vibe as career-type clowns. Most members of the subculture are aptly described as ghetto goth clowns as their style. And when they come together for a concert or a gathering and put on their makeup and costumes, it seems as if they're playing characters or at least alter egos of their own personalities. It's like the gathering finally allows them to be unapologetically themselves. If you examine the music and the lyrics, it inspires the audience to embrace their freakishness, the differences and hardships, despite mainstream society telling them otherwise. These fans are most often in lower socioeconomic classes. They've dealt with abuse and violence growing up and were frequently ostracized or made to feel left out of normal society, which is why they seem to have such a strong familial bond with each other. Another fun prop that they use is the soft drink Faygo, which is paying homage to poverty culture by making one of the cheapest, most white trash knockoff soda brands one of their icons. They usually will reference it. They'll have different flavors to sample. They'll also spray it on each other for fun.
Yeah, that's my favorite part for sure.
The culture itself is about being yourself in the face of adversity and refusing to buckle to the status quo, while also glorifying living life to the fullest and even on the edge of danger. Violence is also a staple subject of this music, which is actually a personification of the emotional struggles that many of these people had to face in their lives. Although I have also even heard of some juggalos that form these circles that use physical pain as a way to entertain, compete with one another, and bond with each other, which is kind of scary. There are other type of entertainers that do that kind of thing, like the knife thrower or, people that walk on beds of nails or hot coals.
What about Jackass?
It's very Jackass for sure, but it's definitely a bonding ritual. It's not about bloodlust as much as it is to see, like, look what I can do.
It's about putting fireworks in your friend's butt.
Yeah. And again, they're not official clowns, but to me, they represent the same idea that embracing your own character or persona, laughing at hardship, and taking on life with no fear and a reckless attitude, that's what brings meaning to their lives. The logo of the band and the record label also features a silhouetted man running with a large hatchet, showing that they are willing to move forward and cut down any obstacles standing in their way. The subculture, the face paint, and the strong social bond shared between juggalos may seem performative and spectacular, but this lifestyle inspires them to live life to the fullest despite adversity, poverty, and the misfortune of their mundane life. They're pretty inspiring to me, even though it's not my cup of tea, but I would totally love to hang out with them at some point.
They definitely seem to know how to party really well together, and it's almost like they create a ritual circle of protection with their laughter and just their obscene silliness. And it's very hard for anybody from the outside to get in. Like, I want to hang out with some of them, but I'm kind of scared. Like, I'm kind of like...
They're really not that scary.
Well, I'm just like, like how intense is the ritual going to be for me to be there and feel calm at any point, or is something always constantly going to be popping off?
Something will always constantly be popping off.
That just takes a different mentality, but that's definitely a magical circle of protection.
Yeah, and then just go into it, it's a no fear kind of thing. Like, you're confronting your fears. So that's why the front is so scary, and there's a lot of like violent speech involved in the music.
It seems a bit like they're conquering chaos with chaos.
Yes, because behind that, I've known a few people, I have a few friends that are, when they described going to the gathering and everything, it's just like, it's so wholesome, but
it's almost like church for them.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Clown church.
Sounds good, man.
I'd go to clown church.
So we've talked about ancient Egyptian, Roman, European, even Chinese clowns. But what about Native America?
I think the most famous of these American native clown-like entities is Kokapelli.
That's the flute guy, right?
I like to say he's holding a didgeridoo because it's a much more older instrument. But
still the association with wind.
Of course. So to the Native American Hopi, and actually a bunch of other tribes from the Southwest United States of America, America. Kokapelli is a fertility god that carries unborn babies in a bag on his back.
Oh, like the stork.
He's also associated as a traveling salesman, musician, a warrior, and a hunting magician.
I like him already.
Yeah, he looks like he's got dreadlocks and he's got a hunchback all the time in his depictions. So he travels around. His primary job is to give the unborn to the future mothers so that they can give birth, of course. You know, he's the one who has the baby and he gives them the baby. And he's not exclusive in this duty, as he does this for animals and humans alike. All life in some cultures. Kokapelli is often in attendance for rituals regarding marriage, and he is also associated with the fertilization of agriculture, known to sometimes have a bag of seeds on him as well, ready to start new plant life wherever he goes. A lot of his earliest depictions are upon pottery that held food to reflect his fertilization powers. These food-related artifacts date to around 1000 BC, so this dude has been around a bit. And like we said, he plays a flute, or perhaps a didgeridoo, and this performance chews away the storm clouds, and he's a sign of the springtime coming, which also gave him some association to be known as a rainmaker. Kind of like Set, he's sending the storm somewhere else. So some people would blame Kokapelli for this.
Let it rain.
Not only that, this also made him the very spirit of music to some tribes. The fact that he played music, not the storm part. Kokapelli is said to be the figure on the moon, much like the rabbit or the man on the moon described in other cultures.
Now that you mention it, the shape of Kokapelli Man does look like the craters on the moon.
It really does. It's true. So Kokapelli's big sack seems to have a lot of awesome stuff in it. I always imagine it as a bag of holding from, like D&D or RPG games.
Awesome.
It's basically, for those who aren't nerds, a bottomless bag that has all your gear in there and more.
Like Santa's sack of presents.
Like Newt Scamander's briefcase in Fantastic Beasts. It's a great example.
Like the fool has a bag. Like the word fool means wind bag. Jeez, it's crazy.
Yeah.
There's so much overlap.
So Kokapelli's music playing announces his arrival, like an ice cream truck or a sideshow circus, perhaps. And it ensures all who are in attendance that an evening of fun is about to break out. He also sometimes arrives with companions that also play music and do tricks and wonderful things, entertainers. A female consort called Kokapelli exists in Hopi versions of the story. These beings have an unmatched storytelling ability as well, showcasing excellent body language to ensure the audience understands every single bit of the story. Kokapelli's nature takes him far and wide, granting him the ability to speak many languages to aid him in his duties or his role.
It's like C-3PO.
I mentioned R2 being a clown earlier. And I think C-3PO definitely is the clown as well, but he's like the fool. He's like the non-initiated clown who's not doing a good job, but he does the best job at the same time.
Well, they're both kind of based on two clownish characters from The Hidden Fortress, the old Japanese movie. So,
Well, that just makes sense. So upon his description, he's got like these protruding hair-like things out of his head. They might actually be antennas, according to some modern researchers. They're like, oh, this is the paste bug, and it's got a proboscis? They're like needle, like a mosquito has, and it's got like these it's got a hunchback and like antenna on the top of its head.
Oh, weird.
And it's kind of club-footed, and it said that Kokapelli had knobby knees, so it's kind of like an insectoid man maybe, which is kind of scary. In some depictions, he has a permanent erection.
Well, so do I.
And his humpback might be a type of TB called Pott's disease.
Ugh.
So he might just be some sicko with a fat boner roaming the lands.
Do you want to have a baby? Here's a baby.
Kind of like Beetlejuice, maybe, this guy.
Ugh.
But he was a good sign for the most part for the general message of this. But his sack, by the way, according to the Navajo, is said to be made of clouds and contains seeds and rainbows.
oh, that's cool.
What the fuck? This guy just got stuff in his bag. Anyway, I imagine Kokapelli coming into town like a circus show, having all kinds of oddities to trade that can't be found anywhere you know of. Some of the more bizarre traits of Kokapelli might paint this whole story a bit more like a freak show, especially when it's said that he sometimes appears with a fully erect phallus ready to party. It's demanding attention. step right up. I got something to show you. Look at this. So I get an idea of like a Pan-like entity from that imagery. And Pan is sort of a clown himself, understanding how virility and naughtiness go hand in hand. In the animal kingdom, we got all kinds of funny, silly dances to court the mate. Sometimes those animals get killed when they're trying to do this too. It's usually the dude. This only supports the understanding that Kokapelli might have quite a few tricks up his sleeves. And this playfulness is said to be due to the fact that he is the spirit of music. So he's very playful. So it's no wonder why he has a ton of groupies, right? He's one of the most popular Native American symbols from the Southwest ever. He's like on all the hippies' cards at, Burning Man, I bet.
Oh, yeah.
According to some of the lore, he is prone to tricking the prettiest girl in the tribe to have sex with him. And with Kokapelli being the playful god of fertility that gives babies to young women, well, that might make him a bit scary to those young girls. And they were afraid of this guy. So maybe that's where we get the cream pies on the clown's faces from.
That's rude.
Don't be mad. It's a joke.
No, I'm just...
I mean, okay, pies. This whole Kokapelli guy kind of reminds me a little bit of the Pied Piper.
Ha, I get it.
Hi. Yeah, the flute of the Kokapelli, it reminds me of the Pied Piper folklore. And he uses his flute to protect the town of Hamelin from rats by luring them away with his magical flute. And I believe that's into a river where they drown. But he's also a trickster because if you don't pay him, he'll lure your children away instead.
Oops.
Yeah. And only the children that are deaf, blind, or disabled were said to be spared from the revenge of the Pied Piper if you wronged him.
That's because they're sacred to the clown. Now, the clowns that exist in Native American culture, although they differ from tribe to tribe, a number of similarities exist between them and their off-continent counterparts. I thought it was interesting that tribes from the plains like the Sioux and the various Pueblo tribes like the Hopi from the southwest both feature spectacularly irreverent clowns, adorning thick bands of black and white paint covering their entire body. Their hair is usually done up into two horns, with corn husks erupting gregariously from them, almost like ears. For the Pueblo natives, they are known as Koshare, and revered as the father of the spirits, or Kachina as they're known, and were revered as such during ceremony. In sacred ceremony to the Kachina, the Koshare enter the proceedings by descending often head first from a rope ladder into the town plaza, where they clumsily fall all over each other, whap each other, beg for food, make fun of people, imitate tribal leaders performing the sacred ceremonies, or run around claiming ownership of everything around them greedily, much like the people who came from off-continent. Similar to European clowns, the Pueblo and Sioux clowns belong to a fraternal society replete with their own rituals and exclusive wisdom. It's not uncommon for the Koshare or other variations of clowns, such as the Zuni, Koyemshi, to engage in pantomime sex, the eating or drinking of filth, or even having large quantities of urine poured upon them. Older accounts report of the Koyemshi ripping live animals apart to eat their entrails like ravenous wolves, competing to swallow the most disgusting parts. And the Koshare are said to have sodomized or masturbated in front of crowds of men, women, and children by the hundreds, laughing with hysterical innocence at their antics. During ceremony or festivals, Koshare can be seen telling lewd jokes to old women, or even throwing the children into the river. They throw unsuspecting children into the river, usually frightening, but it's considered as a blessing. It's meant to purify the child.
It kind of reminds me of, when you're at the pool during the summer and like someone comes up and shoves you in. Everybody ends up laughing, but at first it's scary.
That's how I learned how to swim, literally. They're just like, here you go. And they all were laughing at me, and then I swam.
Well, today, the ferocity seems to have died down a bit. The Pueblo clowns are still said to be hilarious. While explaining their purpose to outsiders, Pueblo natives often say the Koshare serve as examples of what not to do, and this is despite how enjoyable their antics are. They represent the problematic behavior of outsiders and misbehaving Pueblo natives.
My grandmother, she was born in Arizona, and we're a percentage of native. And even the Yaqui Indians, they have these strange parades where their dudes are walking around naked and whipping each other, and they're wearing scary masks and stuff. That's what she told me would happen back in like the 60s still, when there was dirt roads in the town.
The sacred clowns of the plains-dwelling Sioux tribes, like the Lakota and Dakota, have what are called Heyoka, which are similar to Koshare in many ways. Our source for the Heyoka comes from the Sioux native named Lame Deer, born in the Rosebud Reservation of South Dakota, who wrote his accounts of the Lakota in his memoirs, Seeker of Visions. To us, a clown is somebody sacred, funny, powerful, ridiculous, holy, shameful, visionary. He is all this and then some more. Fooling around, a clown is really performing a spiritual ceremony. He has a power. It comes from the thunder beings, not the animals or the earth. In our Indian belief, a clown has more power than the atom bomb. This power could blow off the dome of the Capitol. I have told you that I once worked as a rodeo clown. This was almost like doing spiritual work. Being a clown, for me, came close to being a medicine man. It was the same nature. A clown in our language is called Heyoka. He is an upside down, backward forward, yes and no man, a contrary wise. Everybody can be made into a clown from one day to another, whether he likes it or not. It is very simple to become Heyoka. All you have to do is dream about the lightning, the thunderbirds. You do this, and when you wake up in the morning, you are Heyoka. There's nothing you can do about it. Lame Deer primarily describes Heyoka as being hilarious, which is indispensable when your people and culture are being systemically erased from the face of the earth. One tale recounts a Heyoka pretending to not understand English in a cafeteria, pointing to a sandwich and saying, "I'd like a ham and cheese son of a bitch," to the uproarious laughter of all present. Although people acted as Heyoka, the term could apply to anything, including animals. One tale recounts a Heyoka frog and a Heyoka turtle sitting on a rock next to a lake when it begins to rain. The frog says to the turtle, "Quick, let's jump into the lake before we get wet." According to Lame Deer, the Heyoka and his clownish kin were more dangerous to white man than any of their warriors proved to be, and that's why so many of them were killed or had to go into hiding. He says at one point that the white man is very funny because they do such silly things with such unflinching and inappropriate seriousness. And it wasn't uncommon where if a clown were to clown a white man, they would just kill them. So
Oh no. Kill the clown or the white man?
well, the white man would kill the clown. They didn't like being laughed at.
Should have killed the white man.
Well, they certainly tried. There's one story where the white missionary is handing out mirrors to all the natives, and on the mirrors is like a little like dress that's drawn onto the mirror, so you can hold it in front of you and see your reflection on the dress, so you know how to dress properly. And one time a clown just showed up naked, but with like the shoes and like the headpiece all correct, and like but because they were still dressed in the mirror, and they got in a lot of trouble. You can't go to church naked. He tells one story about Heyoka. He says another clown was called the Straighten Outer. He was always running around with a hammer trying to flatten round and curvy things, making them straight. Things like soup dishes, eggs, balls, rings, or cartwheels.
My balls!
Anything around, he's going to straighten it out with his hammer. Lame Deer explains that the Heyoka are said to get their tremendous power from the Najokinyan, or the sacred flying ones, the thunderbirds. It is believed that in the early days when the earth was young, the thunder beings walked upon the earth and dug out the great valleys and waterways for the streams. Ruling over the waters, they fought with the Unktegala, who was a great water monster covered in red hair, bearing one eye, a massive horn in the middle of the forehead, and a spine like unto a saw. Seeing one meant turning blind for a day, crazy for another, and dead on the third. He says the remains of these beings can still be seen in the Badlands, mixed with the fossils of turtles and seashells, owing to the idea that everything began with water. He says when they died, their spirits went up into heaven, where they gained wings and became the Wakinyan. The Wakinyan reside high above the clouds at the end of the world, where the sun goes down in a great mountain guarded by 4 magical beasts. He says,
These thunderbirds, they are Wakin Oyate, the spirit nation. They are not like living beings. You might call them enormous gods. When they open their mouths, they talk thunder, and all the little thunderbirds repeat after them. That is why you first hear the big thunderclap being followed by all those smaller rumblings. When the Wakinyan open their eyes, the lightning shoots out from there, even in the case of the thunderbird with no eyes. He has half moons there instead of eyes, and still the lightning is coming out. These thunderbirds are part of the Great Spirit. Theirs is about the greatest power in the whole universe. It is the power of the hot and the cold clashing way above the clouds. It is lightning, blue lightning from the sun. It is like a colossal welding, like the making of another sun. It is like atomic power. The thunder power protects and destroys. It is good and bad, as God is good and bad, as nature is good and bad, as you and I are good and bad.
He explains that if these mighty thunderbirds wish for their power to be upon earth and in the world of people, they send one person a dream and appoint them to work out that energy in a human way. This is what makes someone Heyoka. As intriguing as this sounds, being a Heyoka is described as being a great burden.
Like some of Aleister Crowley's early students in the OTO, one must learn to do everything backwards and be equally as contrarian. When one has a dream from the Wakanyan, they awaken with great anxiety, knowing that they must act out their vision in their dream. The next step is to connect with an experienced Heyoka who will purify them so that they can act as Heyoka. Firstly, they are made to endure a sweetgrass sweat lodge facing the opposite direction, inside of which Heyoka songs are sung. Afterwards, a great ritual involving a boiling kettle and a dismantled dog whose tail, spine, and head are still connected with the other parts floating like little chunks in the water are then used to initiate him. As instructed, the Thunder Dreamer begins by saying a prayer and begins to do a dance that was specially made just for him. He dances back and forth between the boiling pot full of dog parts. The dance brings the Thunder Dreamer closer and closer to the boiling cauldron 3 times, each one greeted by the head of the dog, which pops up briefly as if to escape. On the 4th approach, the Thunder Dreamer plunges his arm into the water and searches around for the head, pulls it out, and begins to run to people that he has seen in his vision state to chuck the dog's head at them. It is expected that the person who gets the dog's head thrown at them will be scalded, as well as the person they throw it to, so on and so forth, until about 5 people are burned in a game of dead dog hot potato. The rest of the Heyoka reach into the pot to recover the smaller chunks of dog meat, serving it to the sick or crippled in the community, healing them instantly. It is explained that none of the Heyoka suffer even the slightest discomfort to their arms, and all of them who receive the dog meat are healed quickly and utterly. It is claimed that it is partly achieved with the grayish moss called tapijuta, which only works if you are a Heyoka.
Sign me up. I want to do drugs.
They stick their arms into a boiling pot of water, and they pull out a dog head, which, strangely, the dog symbolism is coherent with the tarot. I thought that was really interesting.
Oh yeah, the fool's
And
dog.
it's 3 times. I was going to say, it's almost like Cerberus. You know, like you're seeing a dog head 3 times. You know, there's dogs nipping at your heels while you're falling off a cliff, you fool.
And I think this is what really gets me about the fool and the clown archetype. It's not something we can get rid of. It's something
It's the
that's
first.
Yeah, it's hard built into the archetypal structure of the universe, it seems like.
You start there, always. Know that you don't know, you fool.
I've even heard some people, when they talk to Enochian angels for the first time, that they're giant clowns.
I was going to say, dude, this guy's describing Enochian spirits. They're enormous gods. That's how I see them. They're taking up quadrants of space. Like their whole, I don't know, don't quote me on this, but I think Enochian angels might be intelligences of galaxies themselves. They're giant things. That's all I'm saying.
So ontologically, the clowns of Native America are remarkably similar to the Fool of the Tarot and the ancient Egyptian Deneg, who are all described as primordial, heaven-imbued beings disposed of thunderous power and a divine innocence which invokes laughter, bypasses ordinary rules, and protects women and children. So if you'd like to hear the rest of our discussion about the Egyptian god Bes, the Aleph of the Fool card, Aleister Crowley's commentary, the Book of the Law, Wepawet, hobos, and Jungian archetypes, please visit www.patreon.com/thewholerabbit, where for just $5, you can not only get the second half of this episode, you'll get the second half of all our episodes going back over 3 years.
That's true. 3-year-old podcast here.
Well, it's about 4 years old, but our paid content only goes back
Okay.
More than that, I'll send you a 5x5 vinyl sticker of our Big Bunny cover art and the secret keys to our Discord server, where you can talk to us about your funny squishy red nose. Thank you, everybody. Eat carrots and shoot lasers.